Hello everyone, Texan Tactical here. Going to be doing a quick video going over two handguns that I've been primarily using recently, differences between them. Main thing is going to be, just comparisons and budgeting. They are two very different price points, but very similar firearms. So what are we talking about today? Well, it's 2025, new year. Big thing, if anyone was at SHOT Show this year, is going to be 2011s. Obviously, there's big companies out there like Atlas, Infinity, Staccato, obviously. But now a lot of different people are starting to step on to the 2011 train. You've got things like the Platypus, obviously the new Staccato HD, and now even companies like PSA are talking about doing their, Saber 11, which is a double stack 9mm 1911. So they are becoming very popular. Now, obviously, there is a wide different, price range for all of these different 2011s. So what I really wanted to do is talk about two different 2011s, two very popular options that are in two different price points. So when we're talking 2011s, there's a few different options that most people are going to kind of gravitate towards. Obviously, the biggest one is going to be Staccato. So we do have one of those that I will kind of get to in a second. But as far as budget options, bunch of different options out there. A big popular one is obviously going to be the Springfield Prodigy from a company like Springfield, very well known, and it is a solid option. Now, the one that I'm going to be looking at is the Live Free Armory Apollo 11 Compact. Now, they make a few different models of these. I went ahead and got the compact one. That is what I prefer. I like the little bit smaller size, as well as I am comparing it to a Staccato C2. So very similar size and very similar kind of overall setup that I have right now. So, brief description of this gun and Live Free Armory. Live Free Armory is a company based in Florida. They make other things like, AR-15s, as well as some like kind of Gen 3 like Glock counterparts. But a big thing that they're doing now is the Apollo 11. They've got it in full size compact like this one right here, and they now have a subcompact model also. As far as setup and really what this is the Apollo 11 Compact. Now, they do have an option with the ported barrel. I have not done that yet. They also have aluminum grip modules that I have not installed yet. I have both of those on the way. So right now it's just a stock Apollo 11. Now, Streamlight TLR1 HL on this one, as well as the Hollow Sun EPS. Now, in the video, you're going to see me shooting with a Surefire X300 Turbo on here. I normally carry it with the TLR1H HL. It's just for that video, because of the holster I was using, which is a Tier 1 MSP, I needed to use that Surefire X300. But overall setup is still exactly the same, just different weapon light. Now, like I said, this is my budget option. So what are we looking at in terms of price? Now, everything in this video was not, given to me for review or anything like that. It was all purchased by myself with my own money. Everything from the, optics, weapon mounted lights, the handguns themselves, as well as ammo and range fees and all that. So no type of affiliation with any of these companies. simply just, stuff that I purchased on my own. So as far as the Apollo 11 goes, normally these retail anywhere from about $900 to $1,000. I purchased this with the Surefire X300 for about $950. So pretty good deal on the setup that I got. Purchased the HoloSun EPS separately for about $300. So in total, I'm looking at, right around kind of $1,200 to $1,300 for this setup right here. Now that is the budget setup that I'm using. As far as what I am using for my more kind of pricey setup is the Staccato C2. Now this is the C2. I know a lot of people are moving to things like the C or the CS. I personally just prefer the C2. I like the size of it, the capacity. It's just, this is my favorite Staccato in terms of just what I want the gun to do. As far as, what the gun is, everyone's pretty familiar with Staccatos at this point. If you're not, Staccato now, after they kind of changed their kind of what they are doing as a company. It used to be very heavily centered around kind of competition guns. Now a lot of what they are doing is duty, 2011. So law enforcement, specifically like LAPD, LA SWAT, a lot of those teams are using custom Staccatos. Texas Rangers are issued Staccatos, and even some local law enforcement agencies. So very popular duty gun right now. As far as what I have into this one, Staccato C2 with the Surefire X300 and the Trijicon SRO. In total, this setup was probably around 3,200, 3,000, 3,200, somewhere around there. Now I do have the C2 with the threaded barrel. I am eventually going to put the Dawson Precision Comp on here. I don't have it on there yet, but the model with the threaded barrel is a couple $100 more compared to the regular C2. So keep that in mind. But in total, we're looking around 3,000 to 3,200. So Live Free Armory, Apollo 11, Staccato C2, obviously, two very different budgets for a 2011. Pros, cons of both. Let's go ahead and get into kind of what my thoughts were and how I did this review. So right off the bat, I do have a little bit more time behind the Apollo 11. I have had this gun for a little bit longer than the C2. So before I started doing this review, I probably already had about 1,000 rounds through this gun, and I had some issues. So while I didn't have any really major issues during the review, I do want to make it known that this gun has actually gone back to Live Free Armory. I have had to change out some stuff with stock parts, but I did have to swap out some stuff. So what were those issues that I had? Right out of the box, about 20 rounds in, my front iron sight on this handgun actually came out. After doing some, research, talking to Live Free Armory, they did send me another iron sight post, put it in, and it did the same thing. It just fell straight out. I actually talked to them at NRA convention 2024. They were there. I was there. I went and talked to them. I talked to their customer service team. I had the gun with me, so I was able to show it to them, and they determined that the dovetail for the front sight post was actually milled too large, so the front sight would not retain. So what they had me do was they took the handgun, took it back to their factory, and they actually built an entirely new slide for the gun. So they took the original slide, got rid of it, or kept it. Who knows what they did with it? But they built an entirely new slide and fit that to the frame of the gun. With 2011s, because they are hand built, the tolerances in them and the fitment is very specific. So they went ahead and built a new slide, fitted it to the gun, sent it back to me, and since then, front sight perfectly fine, and haven't had any major issues in terms of the overall functionality. This is a very smooth gun, very well put together for the price point, no major issues. Now, in terms of another kind of funky problem that I have run into that has since been fixed to my knowledge, hopefully it stays that way. One issue that I was running into was with the actual slide catch. For some reason on this gun, when I was shooting it and the slide would lock back, it was locking back when there was one round left in the mag. It would not make it to an empty mag. Every single mag, whether it be Staccato, Apollo, Staccato, Atlas, any 2011 mag that I was running in this, it was always locking back on the last round. It was not making it through the full mag. There would always be one round left. So that way, when I dropped a mag and reloaded, when I would pick that empty mag up off the ground, it wasn't actually empty. So reached out to Live Free Armory again, and what they did was they actually just mailed me another slide catch, replaced that, and to my knowledge, that has seemed to resolve the issue. I haven't really run into anything like that since then. I have about another 1,000 rounds through the gun, just kind of doing this initial review and comparison, and that issue seemed to be resolved. So those are the two only issues that I've had with the gun so far. And both times, Live Free Armory, their customer service was incredible. I reached out to them. They immediately, no questions asked, said, hey, we're going to fix this. Took the gun back or sent me the part free of charge, and they've handled everything great. So those are kind of some of the issues that I had with the gun. Now let's talk a little bit about actual performance and shooting it and what I found. So in terms of overall performance for a somewhat budget 2011, I was very impressed. I've shot everything from Atlases to Infinities to obviously Staccatos. I even have an original STI, which I'm a big fan of. Prodigies. I mean, if there's a 2011 on the market, or even the 2311s from like OA that use the P320 mags, I've shot virtually everything. And for a budget 2011, obviously it is not going to compare in every aspect to those higher end guns. But in terms of what it is and what you get for the cost, I have been very impressed. In terms of accuracy, overall performance, longevity is still to be determined, but I find it very comparable in a lot of aspects to those higher end guns. Like I was saying, longevity is questionable. I don't have enough time behind the gun to really say, how great it's going to be in the long run, but for initial impressions, very solid. Now, one thing I did notice about my Apollo 11 compared to the C2, which for some people this is a good thing, some people this is a bad thing. For me, for a carry gun, I don't actually prefer it be like the Apollo 11, but for just pleasant shooting and it being, a very balanced gun, the weight of this compared to the C2 is a little bit more. And what that does is it translates directly to that actual recoil impulse and actually control of the gun. This gun is not snappy at all. The actual recoil impulse is very light. It is very easy to control that recoil. The weight of the gun helps really drive that muzzle back down. So shooting this fast is very easy in terms of controlling your recoil. One thing that makes it a little bit more difficult to shoot fast is the actual trigger. So, gun's clear. Now, in terms of the actual trigger, it is a very nice, light trigger press. It is not anything too crazy. It's a 2011, single action only, so you would expect the actual trigger pull to be, nice and smooth and light. One thing that I have noticed is the actual reset is a little bit further travel time than some of those other 2011s, especially the Staccato. So in terms of your initial trigger pull, it is solid. In terms of weights, probably 3, 4, 5 pounds, somewhere around there. But the biggest issue is the actual travel time to the reset, which just makes shooting the gun faster a little bit more difficult. It's not, a major detriment to the gun, but it is something to be aware of. Obviously, you can do trigger work. 2011s are pretty customizable. You can do all kinds of stuff to it to improve that. But stock, in terms of a 2011 trigger, it's not bad, but it's nothing to write home about. One of the other biggest features of this gun is the actual grip module. Now, I did say that I have the aluminum grip module on the way. I really want to swap to that just in terms of comfort. This is a 3D printed grip module. So the actual entire, grip, even the inside of that magwell, is all 3D printed. This is nice, and that is a reason why they were able to make this gun still very good and save money in terms of your actual manufacturing, is because they are 3D printing that grip module, which saves some money. But it's something to, be a little bit weary about. In terms of the long range or long-term, durability of a grip that is completely 3D printed, yet to be seen. It could end up being an issue, could be perfectly fine, but it is something to kind of monitor. Now, in terms of the actual comfort of the grip, it is, very soft. In my opinion, very smooth, a little too smooth. It kind of feels like a felt material, like very soft, and I don't want to say like mushy, but it feels like a fabric. It doesn't really feel like a polymer. Downsides to that is I think it's a little too smooth. They tried to add some of these kind of like dragon scales in terms of the 3D printing, which gives you a little bit of texture, but it's just not very aggressive. I'm not a huge fan of overly aggressive like stippling or materials. One of the biggest ones that I don't really like is the FN509, which I do actually carry. That was my main carry gun for the longest time. The FN grips are very aggressive in terms of their stippling. So when you're shooting a lot, it just gets kind of uncomfortable. This one is not going to get uncomfortable because it is very soft, but you lose out on that grip when your hands are, sweaty or covered in, gun oil, or you've been shooting a lot. So if you're shooting for a long period of time, it's going to be very comfortable, but you're not going to have a ton of grip texture. Now, the biggest downside to the Apollo 11 that I have found is going to be your overall controls. Your safety is not bad. It's nice and smooth. I know some 2011 safeties, some 1911 safeties can actually be very sharp on the edges. This does not have that problem. It is a nice smooth safety, very easy to flip up and down. But it is ambidextrous, which is, in my opinion, a good thing. It makes it very easy for both, left and right-handed shooters to pick this gun up and use it. But that being said, from what I can tell, and my brother is left-handed, so I did give this gun to him to try out, and he said the same thing. The safety on the left side of the gun, so for right-handed shooters like me, is very easy to move up and down. The left side, the right side for a left-handed shooter is significantly stiffer, like really stiff. And this was not something that I need to like break in. This was a problem out of the box. Not that it's really a problem for me because I am a right-handed shooter, but this is something I noticed almost immediately, and my brother that is a left-handed shooter noticed it as well. It is an ambidextrous safety. So what that means is when I flip it on my strong side, it is moving the opposite side as well. So I'm not entirely sure why one side is so much harder to manipulate, because it is moving both sides. So you would think that, both sides would be the same. They are not. This safety on the right-hand side for left-handed shooters is very stiff. As far as other controls that I'm not a huge fan of, the mag release. This mag release is not ambidextrous, so it is on this left side for right-handed shooters. I do believe you can swap this because there is the cutout on the other side for it to be swapped. Not that I would need to do that, but for left-handed shooters, you should be able to. But it is incredibly stiff. not only does it have a lot of travel time, you have to push it in quite far, but it is very gritty, and it does not like to drop mags very easily. I noticed, I have some videos that I can show of me pressing that mag release, and you can tell that I'm pressing it pretty hard before I get that mag to fall out. I have a feeling this has to do with the 3D printed grip modules and the frame. It feels like there is just too much friction there. When you look at 2011s like the Staccatos, where it's using like an aluminum or a steel frame for the actual materials, that's a much smoother surface for that mag release to slide. And this one just does not have that same smooth surface. I could be wrong. That may not be what it is, but it is something that I noticed. I have to push this magazine release significantly harder, which good thing is that means I'm not going to accidentally drop a mag out. But when I want to reload, I notice that especially when I shoot a lot and the gun gets hot, I have to really press it. So that is something to be aware of. If you're purchasing this and you want it to be like a competition gun, it may break in over time, but when you get it out of the box, that magazine release, it's going to be something you have to train with because it is pretty stiff. And last but not least, the final con of this gun, for me it's a con, for some people it will be a pro, is that the optics are direct mounted. I actually like direct mounted optics. The reason I don't like this one is because it's the RMSC shield mounting option, which is fine because I really like the HoloSun EPS, so I can use that. But I would have preferred a larger mounting footprint so that way I could just use plates if I wanted to and use any red dot. Things like an RMR or the Trijicon SRO, which I absolutely love, I can't use those on here. I can only use RMSC footprints. And part of that is because this rear sight is actually milled to the slide, whereas other 2011s like the Staccatos, that rear sight is part of the plate, which we will get to in a second. But it is a direct mounted optic. Very convenient. That also makes the optic sit very low, so I can actually just use normal iron sights to co-witness through the dot. But I just like the larger footprint, so I can use any red dot I want. Not a major issue. It just, it is something to be aware of. If you're getting this and want to put a red dot on it, just be aware it only uses the RMSC footprint. So that is the Apollo 11. Now moving on to the Staccato C2. Obviously these are very popular guns. There's not much to say about it that hasn't already been said, but I do want to make a few things clear in terms of pros and cons. In terms of pros, some of my favorite things about this gun are just the overall build and the kind of versatility that something like the Staccato gives you. With the way the grip modules are designed, there are a lot of different options, not just from Staccato, but other companies that make grips for this gun as well. So if you don't like the grips that it has on it, you can either go to Staccato and have them custom make you one and choose the grips you want, or you can even go to a lot of different companies and find different options that work for you. So very versatile in terms of grip texture and your actual grip modules, as well as that gives you the option to use things like magwells. I don't have one on here right now, but if you're using it for competition shooting, you can get those larger magwells that will work on the Staccato grips as well. Like I mentioned with the Apollo 11, that I don't like, one of my favorite things about the Staccato is the actual optic mounting system. Now, I do prefer my rear sight be mounted directly to the slide, whereas the Staccatos use I'm using the Dawson Precision plate, which the rear sight is never fixed to the actual gun. It's part of the optic plate, but that allows me to use things like Trijicon RMRs, the SRO. I absolutely love the SRO. It's my favorite pistol red dot on the market. I know some people will be amazed by that, but I just love these things. So it allows me to use the actual optics that I prefer. Other pros, controls comparative to the Apollo 11, things like the mag release, the safety, even the ambidextrous safety on the other side. It's just significantly easier to manipulate, at least for left-handed shooters. Now, for me, I'm not used to doing it, so it's a little bit harder for me to manipulate comparative to an actual left-handed shooter. But in terms of the actual effort needed, it is noticeably less than something like the Apollo 11. Now, as far as cons for this gun, I really don't have any major complaints. I guess I could consider the actual optic plate and the rear sight not being, a part of the actual slide. I could consider that a con, but I understand why it is designed like that. It's so you can, fit whatever optic on here you want. Whereas if that rear iron sight is built into the gun, that takes up a lot of space that the actual optic is using. In terms of overall, this gun comparative to other things, like I said, in terms of retail price, this is about a $2,400 to $2,600 handgun. The trigger is solid in terms of my actual trigger pull and in terms of my take up time and my reset, significantly better than the Apollo 11, but comparative to some other 2011s, including the older original STIs. I have an original STI Staccato P. The trigger on that thing is incredible. The trigger on this is not bad, but it is not near as good as the original STI. Now, I haven't done a ton of research on this. I would assume it's because these are designed to be a little bit more duty-based, whereas the original STIs were a little bit more competition guns. Because of that, you don't want your duty gun having a super light trigger like the original STIs. So I would assume that was an intentional change. But it is noticeable. The triggers on the original STIs, if you ever get to shoot one, you will notice immediately that those triggers, while these are not bad, the older STIs were just better. Overall, in terms of performance between the two, fantastic guns for both of them. Now, in terms of a comparison, what do I prefer? What is more worth it, and why? Apollo 11 is a fantastic gun. Live Free Armory did a really good job. I know I mentioned a little bit more cons for this gun as well as actual issues that I did have with the gun. I will give it to Live Free Armory. Their customer service was fantastic and they did help me immediately. Very quickly solved all my issues, no problem. And they've been very helpful throughout the entire kind of process of owning this gun and shooting it, but it is something to be aware of. While this is a budget 2011, it's still a $900 to $1,000 gun for just the handgun. When you look at things like Glocks, P320s, Smith & Wessons, the Walther PDP, those are going to be several $100s less. Is the price point for a budget 2011 worth it? For me, I would still say yes. I think this is very worth the, let's say, $1,000 that you're spending on this gun. You are getting a lot for that $1,000, and you're, staying within that budget 2011 price range. You're getting a very good trigger for a, single stack handgun comparative to something like a striker fired handgun. You're getting a very smooth slide and actual reciprocation, very smooth gun to shoot. And very little recoil for something like this. Obviously, it is going to be a good bit heavier than something like a Glock or a Smith & Wesson, M&P, but it's going to be personal preference at the end of the day. I would say that something like the Apollo 11 for the price point is a very good purchase, and it is worth the money. Now, the main thing that people are going to ask is, are the Staccatos worth it? This is going to sound like a cop-out answer, but that's going to kind of depend on each individual person. Obviously, you should not be going into debt. You should not be dropping a ton of money that you don't have on a $3,000 handgun. Don't be an idiot. The best handgun you can get is the one that you train with the most. Now, in terms of, are the Staccatos worth it? In terms of overall performance and how comfortable the gun is, how fast you can shoot it, the actual accuracy of the gun, it does not compare to things like a Glock. The Staccatos are undoubtedly better. Now, is it, $2,500 better? That's going to be something you need to answer on your own. I am lucky enough to have a job in the industry and, make enough money at that job to where I am comfortable spending the money on something like this. Not everyone is. For me, this was a purchase that was 100% worth it. I love this gun. It is the gun I carry every single day. Fantastic performance. As far as whether or not it's worth it to you, get out there, try one out, shoot it, see how you like it, and make that decision yourself. In terms of comparisons between the two, which gun won? Live Free Armory Apollo 11 Compact, Staccato C2. Which one is the better purchase? Now, obviously, based on everything I've said, I think it's pretty obvious that I prefer the Staccato C2. It is a better handgun. The Apollo 11 is fantastic, but I've had some issues with it, and in terms of raw performance, the Staccato C2 is the better option. Now, with that being said, the Apollo 11 is a much more affordable 2011. Would that make it more worth it to you? That is a possibility. That is something that you need to think about. If you really want a 2011 and you want to go the budget route, I think the Apollo 11 is a fantastic option. Comparable to things like the Springfield Prodigy, potentially even better, as well as, a lot of other budget 2011s, Rock Island. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff out there now. The Apollo 11 is definitely an option that people should look at if they are interested in a budget 2011. Now, on the other hand, if you really want to just go straight into the 2011 game and you want to get a good one that is going to be worth the price and it is going to give you, the baseline performance that you expect out of a 2011, Staccato, you can't go wrong. Whether it be the P, the CS, C2, like what I have, even going up to things like the XC, which is a, much more competition, focused Staccato, or even things like the XL for duty use. Staccato makes fantastic guns. I'm a big fan of them. There's a reason I own one, and there's a reason I carry one. But both fantastic guns. I really enjoy shooting both of them. I was, pleasantly surprised with the overall performance of the Apollo 11 compared to the C2. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. It helps out. This is my first long form video. I hope it was informative. Hope maybe you learned some stuff. And like I said, if you have any questions, please put them down in the comments. There's a lot more coming. I'm going to be making a lot more videos and getting out there and shooting a lot more. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.